So, on a more serious note,
Yeah.
like all the resources in this world, attention is also one that is in danger, let's say,
Yeah.
and requires our attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's under attack. We have a growing deficit in our capacity to pay attention.
Yeah.
In many ways.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some urgency here to address this.
Yeah, we're not working in a vacuum.
No.
You can say there is a crisis of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it influences also our behaviors with others. Lacking empathy, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to communicate with other people. People describe it as a very, very difficult capacity or very much needed capacity at work. For sure, in families and children and spouses and partners. So there is a big issue, not just about learning and education, but also in schools.
Yeah.
And also with the way that we activate nowadays the very complex things like a car. You have to be attentive when you drive.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not so evident.
Mm-hmm.
So managing in a complex world requires a lot of attention just to come through, just to get by. And we are facing now a big crisis of attention, and we can look into the features or the characteristics or the issues where it really strikes us.
Yeah.
You can mention some maybe that come to mind immediately for you.
I think for me the most obvious thing is how we get distracted so easily.
Mm-hmm. So
because
that's a big
our devices pull our attention in such an attractive way,
mm-hmm.
and they're designed to do that,
mm-hmm.
that it's really, really difficult to withdraw from this. I mean, I don't drive, I don't drive cars, but I drive
mm-hmm.
the bike. And don't quote me on this, but I sometimes look at my phone while I'm driving my bike.
Whoa, okay.
And of course I also see people checking their phones while they're driving a car, which is even more dangerous because obviously they have more force behind their vehicle.
Yeah, so distractions are a big thing. And distractions are not new, but of course they become now very, very powerful with the devices and the way of life that we are leading.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they are called digital distractions because they come from the digital devices. And there are different ways to distract ourselves and different ways to be distracting others. And we know it also from children that they often distract, and even pets, or the little things that we manipulate one another, to draw attention.
Mm-hmm.
So look at me. Okay. So the device can say that, but
mm-hmm.
a person can say that, or we are familiar with the mechanism of how this works, but it becomes now overwhelming, and it kind of burns our capacities.
Mm-hmm.
We are constantly. It's, for instance, very, very funny to see how, even without wanting it, we are attentive and aware to the little sounds that the phone makes.
Yeah.
Bing!
And some people are unable to turn it off.
Yeah.
I so many times in a Zoom call or something, and suddenly somebody's speaking and it goes like, bing, bing, shit, I don't know how to turn this off. And I'm like, wow, we don't know how to turn it off. Like, this is, imagine.
Yeah. So we are looking later on at how do we manage this.
Mm-hmm.
But the crisis itself, and it's very humiliating, I think it's worth noting, the same behavioristic concept of the Pavlovian experiment with drooling dogs,
mm-hmm.
when they react to a bell. This kind of conditioning is now happening to us.
Yeah.
And life becomes a little bit like a laboratory of a big experiment that we are all engaged in, and reflects back to us the level of our engagement and our attention and how much do we manage to hold it. So I would like to draw attention to two things with the distraction. One is that when there is the stimulus that comes in that calls you, like the ping on the phone, how quick it becomes the center without you even choosing it. Like you got an email, or one of those things. So there is not even the choice of yes, no. Who is the boss? So that's one thing. So we must look at it now. This is the command that is conditioned.
It could be important.
Yes, of course.
That's what it says. To me, this is what it says.
Yeah.
It could be important.
Yeah. So this is the one thing. The second thing is that if I do wish to concentrate, how long do I manage to concentrate?
Yeah.
So there is the distractions, and they all the time take me away from something that I'm trying to do. And those things are really worthwhile to look at. So distractions, digital distractions, the disruptive technology now, the means by which it draws our attention is very dramatic, and we have to learn to counteract it. So we have to learn to come up with something. Like anything else, remember that we are talking about devices that are now, by the way, the iPhone this week marked its 15th anniversary. So it's a little bit more than a bar mitzvah. Yeah, exactly. And it's a teenager. Now, it changed our lives completely, the mobile phone, not just the iPhone as a brand. But now, this brought a new thing into the field, but it was already complicated enough before.
Yeah.
Now we have to come up with something to balance, to counteract it, because it's a new thing. It's a new thing on the block. We don't yet know how to deal with this. We don't yet know how to turn it off. Every technology, fire, required precautions.
Yeah.
Using water pipes required some awareness to not creating a flood in the building, not burning the whole house down, and other things, electricity, not to get yourself killed. Those things are with us now for hundreds, thousands, tens, decades of years, and already developed some kind of hazards, some kind of controlling the disaster, the potential disaster in this thing.
You mean we got better at...
Yes.
Yeah.
And we had to learn it, and we had accidents with it, and we saw
Still
that it's
have.
bad. Yeah.
Sometimes.
The people that created the X-rays, they got sick with cancer because they didn't understand that it's dangerous for their health, and then we learned this. So it's an accident about to happen.
Yeah.
And we are now in the middle of this accident. What we want to do when we speak about attention and attention management is to give the hope, but also the tools and the training and the framework.
Yeah.
We can counteract this. Just like you light candles or you light the fire, you can also learn to put it out. This is how we want to deal with this thing. So it's not against fire. It's not against the wheel.
Yeah.
It's not against...
So I think we will speak about this in a different minisode.
Yeah.
And right now...
But to go back to those...
Exactly.
To those aspects...
Because I think distraction is just one of them,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Because let's say we managed to turn off the ping. Eventually, we clicked through all the options and found the mute button and successfully did this. Put away our phone, and we're ready to go. And we realize after 3.5 minutes... I desperately crave a distraction.
Yeah, for instance. So it could be that you turn off the phone and then turn on the computer. You turn off both of them, you turn on the TV.
Yeah. Or I go for a piece of chocolate.
Okay, for instance. Yeah.
Or
a piece of chocolate is a good one, because the next one I would like to speak about is addictions.
Okay.
So one of the things we know now also neurologically is that when we cannot manage anymore our awareness to what we want to achieve, or we get overloaded, especially in the prefrontal cortex.
To just slip in, like, this is about attention span and the ability to concentrate.
Yeah, and to use attention for what we want, like planning, studying, learning, working, deep work, whatever it is that we want to do, or we set out for ourselves to be doing today or this morning. When it starts to be overwhelming, the multitasking is one of those examples. I cannot anymore. Like, it's too much. I get stuck. Again, the bottleneck Also on the cognitive scale, I cannot concentrate anymore. I would need something to change. What we know that kicks in is the reward center. And then there is the chocolate, for instance. So many times when we cannot really manage the situation, we would go away from doing what we wanted to do exactly to those places that give us the feeling of something nice, something sweet, something good. But it becomes a cycle that sometimes when we just cannot manage properly our capacities and our resources, we end up more into the addictive part of attention. And it's also important respectfully, without a blame, to see those places for us. And we have different things. Some people are addicted to puppy videos, and some people go on the news and they play a computer game, different things. It doesn't even have to be bad things, but you didn't want to do it, and suddenly you end up now listening to Spotify on something else, or you just distracted yourself. And we know that we can be very good in those things, to slide through the net and to sneak out from the things we wanted to do, and we just feel bad with ourselves, and it just strengthens this cycle of
needing the reward,
addiction.
needing the kick.
So those are some of the tricky places that we try to work with embodiment and with attention management. We will talk about it later on. And as a result of the distractions and as the result of the addictions, we can also start to see how it influences our brains. Because one of the things we see nowadays with the dopamine and with those neurotransmitters that are so important, especially for the younger generation, until the age of 25, our prefrontal cortex still evolves. So if we burn it, and if we start to every time need a more violent computer game to get the kick, or stronger music, or quicker
it has
cycles,
a different impact in this age.
It can burn it. Those receptors are not very happy about it, and sometimes they die. So we are creating now, again, as part of this cultural experiment, with a lack of attention, or with a lack of ability to control our attention, we bring into the playground dangerous players that we don't yet know the consequences of, just like we saw with obesity with computers in the 90s or 80s. That suddenly children became unhealthy and sat too long and didn't play. Now we are aware of it.
Probably many factors in this, right? But this is one of them.
So this now becomes another issue. People call it to hack the mind. So even the colors of the iPhone or the mobile phones, the way that the colors are calling our attention, some people learn to turn them off. There are certain features that you can make it gray. So it's 50 shades of gray. It becomes less alluring. But it's really funny to see how attentive we are to those little stimulus that come. So the stimuli, they just pull us in, away from what we want to do.
Yeah, I can really feel that when we speak about this, it makes me a bit like, like this, like a bit like, no. Let me, leave me be.
Let me be.
Let me be. Please let me eat my chocolate.
Which is completely fine to eat the chocolate. Nothing against the chocolate.
But I think I can feel this addictive aspect trying to rebel against this.
And I remember when I was doing my research for the schools, for the project of attention, I looked at videos that children post. And some of them were really sad. They said, look, I come home, I want to do this, I want to go play basketball, I want to do my homework. And I end up suddenly playing computer games, and then my mother comes home in the night, and I just see that I lost 8 hours. So, and they say, I don't understand how it happened. Like, I was not there. So those are the places that we really have to wake up and to start to see, like, whoa, what's happening? And it's not against the technology, but it's about us humans learning to use it more wisely. And think of it just like fire, just like having a water hose on the roof. You don't want to drench the whole house. Just like having a beautiful car. It calls forth in us to be a better user, to be a smarter, more responsible partner, to be somebody who sees on the road also the other cars, the other humans, other people. All these capacities that basically make us human, and we can kind of rejuvenate them, make them healthy.
But I think what I also hear, or maybe think, where is this voice? No.
The chocolate one.
No, that there's also limitations needed around this, right? Like
Regulations yes.
to also protect especially children during their development from certain things, and just not allow access. Or this is assuming I'm not an expert in this, and I don't know if this is your area.
I can give you an example, because again, from the research I've done, the way that the screen works with the videos, even for children, if it changes quicker than minimum of a 3-second frame, the attention of the child is completely hooked, not because the program is so good, but because there is suddenly a change of frame. Now they see this little puppet, and now they see this little puppet, and I'm constantly having to catch up with something that is happening that stimulates me to get hooked on being fully concentrated to understand what's happening. So this is triggering this quick reward or quick response,
which is basically building like teaching the brain to want this.
And brain body, let's look at it as a larger creature, but it means later on that the child goes to the, let's say, to the garden, to the field, to the park, and he looks at a tree or on the bird, or there is a little cat or mama, and the world moves far too slow. It's boring, because mama is not jumping suddenly with the cat and the bird and the tree and everything. I am used to everything running so fast, and in an artificial way, I am stimulated by this thing, that when I go back into a normal world, it's too slow. So my capacities are burning in very, very high speed, and they don't match the reality of my world into which I'm supposed to develop as a normal human being. So the regulations that you speak of will eventually come. But we might now already be speaking about a generation that is lost. And we have already to speak to the people that today are in their 20s or 30s coming out of this, having to understand, okay, there is something about my education that I really need to go into in order to educate myself to be healthy with regards to those things. And I didn't learn this in school. Maybe the next generations will. I had one in one of the school workshops that I've done. There was a 17-year-old girl, like I'm almost in my 60s now. So 17-year-old girl that comes and told me after the workshop, I really think it's for us too late. We are lost. I cannot do without my phone. I was asking them to turn off the phone. And again, it's not against the phone. Just to show as an example. It was almost like cutting their bloodline. There's no air supply. There's nothing. I'm going to die. It was very, very interesting to see. And they already recognize that there is something about them that is lost to this thing. So it's not about cutting away the phone, but it's about raising the awareness to the importance of attention and to be able to manage it better. Actually, what we call is for people to rise up to the occasion. It's not against the technology. The technology will have to adapt and will have to be regulated for sure. But it's more about how do I learn to deal with the situation. Like you ride the bike. Let's say that now the situation...
Of course, I never do this. That's just... I saw people doing it.
That's sweet. Somebody else. My
neighbor. I asked for a friend.
My neighbor with the chocolate also. So if I now learn to work to drive my bike in a more careful way, and there is something not okay on the road, that I'm able to adapt to understand, okay, now we have this issue, and I have to adapt to it. It's not against the road. It's not against the bike. It's for you.
And I really... Like maybe one more example before we then wrap it and go to the happy side of it, or the hopeful side of it. But I also consider learning new information. I sometimes find it hard to read a book because I can only have one source of one source. I'm
inputs.
consuming just one source.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm watching something in Netflix, I can still look at my phone at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But I cannot read a book and look at my phone. So this is boring. Like,
Boring.
and
Yeah.
it's, how dramatic is this?
Yeah.
I mean, it really takes away
Yeah.
so, like,
Yeah.
unbelievably much if I'm not able to read a book because it's not stimulant enough.
Yeah. Stimulating enough
Stimulating
to make you hooked.
Yes.
And then again, because it's not enough, we have to accelerate, and let's say the books will have to become more sexy, more violent, more faster.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I watched one with a friend once with a friend. His favorite film from the 70s or 80s, I don't remember what. It was supposed to be an action film. We fell asleep. Like, this was in the 70s or something. This was supposed to, and he's like a film maniac.
Yeah.
He was so offended that we fell asleep
Yeah.
watching his action movie from the 70s, because it was like a groundbreaking action film, and there was chasing cars and things, and so you can see the level of anxiety, but also accelerating, and the energy that is given nowadays to everything. It's constantly pushing, and if you don't do it, it feels completely boring. Now, if you think of meditation, if you think now about opening perception, teaching people to be silent, you can learn in a different way how interesting it gets. And that's another magical part. I was listening the other day with my son to the bees, and I wanted him to hear the zzz of the bees, because he knows songs about bees. But suddenly I could see on his face how entranced he was, just enchanted to hear the, wow, they really make this bzzz, and I can be quiet and listen to them.
Yes.
So reminding ourselves that also offline we are in the midst of infinity.
Yes.
And it's a universe that is like, we don't know a much more interesting one. And we are really interesting creatures by ourselves.
Not much more interesting.
It's not going to be so boring. Like, it will be okay. We just have to learn in a way to recalibrate the capacities. And then you can really find such interest and such intensity in as if nothing. So it just it's a little bit like playing with the gears and finding the vehicle in an entirely different way. So this is what we are going to hopefully to get to.
This is what we're going to address.
Too despaired and
this is also
depressed.
what the next workshop is going to be about, right?
Yeah.
Really, like, how this is why it's important to us, because we hope it can be a way out of this misery.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we will get there.
We will
At
get
least
there.
we will do our best to offer options of coming out. Okay, so it's not too much down after.
No, there was the opening the window.
So we have a deal.
We have a deal.